Hello and welcome. I'm Joanna Junak and this is GFN News on GFN.tv. Taiwan looks set to become the next country in Asia to ban nicotine vaping products. Lawmakers in Taiwan approved amendments to the Tobacco Hazard Prevention Act, which ban electronic cigarettes, regulate the use of heated tobacco products, and raise the legal purchase age for combustible cigarettes. Samrat Chaudhry, a journalist and consumer advocate from India, is joining us today. Hi Samrat. Why did you decide to write about Taiwan, and what has made you interested in this new vaping law?
Hi, Joanna. So, while I'm involved in consumer advocacy, professionally, I've been a journalist for over 2 decades. So there was a bit of professional curiosity on what's happening. And I was also interested in what's happening in the South China Sea. That's Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Taiwan, Japan. And, all of them are now formulating policies. And it's interesting to see how and, who's doing what and what may be in favor of consumers and what may be hurting them. And also in the Asian context, what's happening in Taiwan also impacts what's happening in India and the region. So I was interested in the policy direction being taken in Taiwan, and especially that they have banned use of electronic cigarettes. So that's not happened anywhere in Asia before. I don't think any major country has taken that step. So that also was a point of curiosity. I wanted to know what's happening on the ground.
When we talk about regulations, do you see India's regulations and Taiwan's regulations as similar?
Yes. So in India, in 2019, vaping was banned, right? But the ban was on manufacture, sale, export, import, advertising, though use in possession was not banned. So Taiwan has taken a similar route. It is also, if you look at the bill, it heavily quotes the WHO, FCTC on their policy guidelines, which incidentally mention only that nations should prohibit or regulate, right? So they have taken the prohibit part of it a little more seriously, which is counter to what's happening in almost all parts of the world, because the nations that ban vaping are very few. And if you look at the WHO data, the number of countries that regulate or have regulatory measures far outnumber the ones that have banned. So, but the Taiwan ban is a little more draconian in the sense it also bans use and possession, which I don't think has happened before. And I fear that this may be picked up by some other nations or developing nations. What you have to keep in mind is that you need an enforcement machinery to monitor your citizens like that. So I don't see the implementability of this ban being really high. Rather than to score just a few brownie points with either the WHO or show to the people that we are doing something. So the laws are similar, but the Taiwan one goes a little step ahead.
What's the smoking rate in Taiwan? Are there a lot of people who smoke?
Well, as with everywhere else, tobacco use or tobacco smoking prevalence has been declining, but it's still in the 20% range, around 19%. And given that the population is around 21 million, that's about 3-4 million people who are smoking. And I believe a lot of them are now using heated tobacco products and e-cigarettes.
So if we still see a smoking problem in Taiwan, why do you think the government is planning to ban e-cigarettes and thus reduce access to safer nicotine products?
Well, see, from what I spoke to people over there a few opinions emerge. So while there could be an indirect pressure from the WHO, even though Taiwan is not part of the WHO, but it has been trying or struggling over the last few years to become a part of WHO, and that application keeps getting denied. So this could be one way of showing that, okay, we are ready to play by the international regime, we are ready to implement. And we know in the past that the best way to make the WHO and FCTC happy is by banning vapes, and we see that in the award being given to the Mexico president, and a few days later we had that legislation. Panama, which again has banned, is now where the FCTC will be held. The Indian minister got an award. So, that could have played a part. But there could be other reasons also. For example, the tobacco industry, and this is what I heard from one of the main consumer advocates there, the tobacco industry and the big pharma are at war over control on nicotine. And while big pharma, wants nicotine in their fold, which is through medicalized route, the tobacco industry obviously would like to be involved in vaping products. So while they got their way with heated tobacco, the big pharma got their way through a ban. It could also be due to ignorance or lack of information among lawmakers, which I think is prevalent everywhere across the board, and not just a Taiwan issue, but generally a global issue. And I think that would have played. And then, of course, the fears of teen vaping, which seem inflated, but the way it's presented to a lot of policymakers is that banning would somehow prevent that from happening.
And how about reactions from different groups like consumers, policy experts, and medical experts? What have they said about this proposal of banning nicotine products?
So I spoke to a lot of people while researching for the article, and I was surprised at how many people didn't want to talk to me because they were sort of afraid that there will be action against them if they spoke out against government policy, which also gave me a sense that while Taiwan may not be that free, but that's not just the Taiwan issue. For example, in India, a lot of people will not speak publicly, even though in private they would say yes, they back harm reduction measures, but publicly they would not. So I did informally speak to a lot of people, but a lot of people I could not quote, and some people that I did quote, I had to change their names because they were afraid that police would land at their door. That said, the general opinion that I had from people was that yes, this is going to hurt the current vapers, but also people who smoke who may want to switch in the future. So what the most likely outcome that I saw happening was that there will be an underground market. In fact, from what I heard from vendors, is that they're already preparing to adjust to underground lifestyle, or where they would be now sort of peddling their wares, where they could sell it through vape shops. So the consumers, of course, are really not happy. They think that they have been shortchanged. There are, from what we hear, a large population of vapers in Taiwan. There were vape shops in Taiwan, all of which will go underground. And and the fact that they've also banned use is criminalizing a lot of people just for making a safer choice. Now, from what I hear, most of them don't intend to go back to smoking just because the government has banned it. So the likely outcome is going to be that there will be a black market. There will be fewer safeguards for selling to minors because now there is an industry which was regulated, or at least there was self-regulation, and governmental regulations could have supported and bolstered or made those regulations stronger. But now it's going to be in the black market. Everyone will have access. It's a problem in the making. So I don't think the vaping industry or the vapors would suddenly disappear because the government has taken a dim view of the situation.
And just one last question, Samrat. What is the legal status of the ban now?
So the phase that it is at is that it went through 3 readings of the parliament. And then the final, so on January 12th of this year, the bill cleared the House, as in the executive. So now it is cleared the floor, the executive floor, the legislative floor, I'm sorry. And it just remains that for the president to give accent to it, to give a nod to it. But since the president is from the same party which proposed and got it passed, it's almost a certainty. And also, I was speaking to advocates and people, policy people from Taiwan. There has never been an instance that the president has not or has refused to sign a bill. So it's only a formality. And I think in the next few months, we expect the ban to come into force. A month later is when it will actually come to force from the time that the president signs it. So it's only a matter of time, but as far as all practical purposes, it's a done thing.
Thank you, Samrat. Join us on Friday to hear more about the situation in Taiwan. Brent will interview Danny Won from Vape Taiwan. Thanks for watching or listening. See you next time.